Greetings, and welcome to the West Virginia Secretary of State's newest edition of Pollworker Training. Today, we will be giving step-by-step instructions on the proper procedures for running the polling place on Election Day, and we are so glad you are here. This Pollworker Training video is a helpful learning tool that was made with the help of our terrific county clerks. For issues that are not discussed in this video, please consult with your county clerk for additional guidance. Now let's get started. Section 1. Before the polls open. This section will cover the proper procedure for preparing and opening the polling place on Election Day. Poll worker arrival and oath. All poll workers should report to the polling place by 5:30 a.m. If any official has not arrived by 5:45 a.m., the workers present should contact the county clerk's office, which will work to fill the vacancy. Poll workers must read and sign the poll worker oath before beginning their duties for the day. At exactly 6:30 a.m., a poll worker must step outside of the precinct and announce in a clear and audible manner that the polls are officially open. Poll workers should work diligently to ensure that all setup is complete prior to 6:30 a.m. Signage. This section will cover what information should be posted outside of the polling place and at the designated entrance. The door of the entrance to the polling place must have the following signage posted: the polling place sign containing the precinct number, a sample ballot, instructions to voters, a list of the official write-in candidates if there are any, a list of acceptable forms of voter identification, a sign informing the voter of their rights, a sign with information on provisional ballots, a sign containing the hours that the precinct will be open to voters, and historically, West Virginia polling place entrances include United States flags on the entrance of the polling place. The parking area must have at least one van accessible space. The accessible space must be located at the shortest accessible route to the voting area. Signs shall be 60 inches minimum above the finished floor or ground surface measured to the bottom of the sign. A lack of accessible parking can be resolved by displaying temporary signage and utilizing traffic cones to designate parking spaces in flat, firm, paved areas. For unstable surfaces, such as gravel or drain grates obstructing the path of travel, temporary mats can be placed, ensuring a stable, firm, and non-slip surface. To establish the no electioneering zone outside the polling place, poll workers must measure a 100-foot distance from the entrance in both directions using the measuring cord provided. At each of the 100-foot marks, a no electioneering sign must be posted. This requirement applies to all entrances to the polling place. Preparing inaccessible polling places for curbside voting. Under the ADA, the County Commission must select polling sites that are or can be made accessible so that voters with disabilities can participate in elections on the same terms and with the same level of privacy as other voters. In the rare circumstance that a polling place is inaccessible, voters with physical impairments that prevent them from entering the polling place may request to vote an absentee ballot from an automobile if no voters are voting or waiting to vote inside the polling place. Post signage provided by the county clerk informing voters of the possibility of voting curbside, the location of the curbside voting, and how voters can notify poll workers that they are waiting curbside. Set up the method as instructed by the county clerk for voters with disabilities to announce their arrival at the curbside. A temporary doorbell or buzzer system would be sufficient, but not a telephone system requiring the use of a cell phone or a call-ahead notification. Setting up the check-in table. Materials that are required to be on the poll worker or poll clerk's table include a paper poll book or electronic poll book if applicable, lists of absentee and early voters, unless that is tracked in an electronic poll book, a listing of official write-in candidates if there are any, a sample ballot, instructions to voters, provisional ballot envelopes and information, voters' rights information, information on West Virginia's voter ID requirements, voter assistance forms and information, and any additional forms or information required by the county clerk. Paper Pollbook Setup. If your precinct will be using a paper pollbook, confirm that the tamper-evident seal is intact before beginning. Once broken, keep the pollbook sealed to return to the county clerk later. The paper pollbook contains the registration information of every voter in the precinct, including their full name, physical address, and party registration. Poll clerks use the pollbook to check in each voter as they enter the polling place. There is a blank section in the back of the poll book for voters who are not in the poll book but insist on voting in the precinct. These voters can fill out a blank listing in the paper poll book and will be issued a provisional ballot to be considered at canvass. More on this later in the video. ExpressVote Setup. The ExpressVote ballot marking device allows voters to mark their ballot electronically instead of marking their ballot by hand. To access all compartments of the ExpressVote, poll workers will need access to the barrel key that accompanies the voting equipment. Remove the ExpressVote machine, power cord, and headphones from the carrying case. Plug the small circular end of the power cord into the back of the ExpressVote machine and the other end into a power source. Unlock the security access door on the left-hand side of the machine to turn the power switch on. When the election code screen appears, enter the code provided by your county clerk and press Accept. Once the code has been accepted and the To Begin Voting screen appears, close and lock the security access door. ExpressVote should be positioned at least 5 feet apart from each other, away from an entrance, exit, or highly trafficked area, with the screen facing a wall without windows or cameras. This placement ensures the maximum amount of privacy possible for each voter. If your precinct kit provides privacy screens to use with the ExpressVotes, set those up at this time. Place an instructional card with each ExpressVote machine. No other materials are allowed at the voting machine. A voter may review a list of write-in candidates at the poll worker or poll clerk's table. The ExpressVote also serves as an ADA-compliant voting machine for voters with disabilities. Federal law requires that each precinct has at least one accessible voting machine for federal elections. Poll workers must set up the accessible machine prior to opening the polls to avoid additional wait time for voters. Hand-marked or optical scan ballots. Voting booths should be placed at least 5 feet apart from each other with adequate space for wheelchair turning and positioned with the voter's back facing a wall with no windows. Booths should not be placed near any entrances, exits, or other highly trafficked areas that can jeopardize the privacy of the voter. A voter instruction card should be placed in each voting booth along with a pin if necessary. All other materials, including the list of official write-in candidates, are prohibited from being placed within the voting booth. If the precinct kit includes privacy screens, set those up at this time. An ADA-compliant voting machine must be provided to those voters with visual, perceptual, or cognitive disabilities for federal elections. For more information, see our section on voter accessibility and ADA compliance. Ballot box position and setup. The ballot box should be placed between the voting booths and the exit so that it is in full view of all poll workers and voters throughout the day. Before the polls open, 2 poll workers of opposite political parties will look inside the box to confirm that it is completely empty. After confirming there are no contents within, close the box and secure it with 2 unique locks. Each lock should have a unique key that will only open one of the locks. The keys to the separate locks must be given to commissioners of opposite political parties to ensure that no single person can open the ballot box. Once ballots have been placed inside the ballot box, it should remain locked at all times. Both individuals in possession of a key must be present at all times when the box is open. Statements of ballots used form. Before the polls open, poll workers must enter the total ballots received on the Statement of Ballots Used form. The number will be on the receipt for each wrapped package of ballots. Ballots received will be compared to ballots used and unused at the close of polls. Section 2. Checking in voters. This section will cover how to check in a voter once they enter the polling place. Voter identification. When someone enters the polling place, direct them to the poll clerk's table. First, you should ask the voter for their name, address, and an acceptable form of voter identification. Under West Virginia law, the voter must show a photo ID to vote. Narrow exemptions do exist for voters who swear and affirm that they belong to recognized religious communities that prohibit them from being photographed. Only these voters are permitted by law to provide a state-issued ID without a photo for voter ID purposes. Acceptable forms of photo ID include a West Virginia driver's license or ID card, a West Virginia photo voter identification card, a driver's license from another state, a U.S. passport, a U.S. military ID card, a U.S. or West Virginia government employee ID, a student ID, or a concealed carry permit. Voters of the age 65 or older may use one of the accepted forms of voter ID that is currently expired as long as it was valid on their 65th birthday. In order to register, new voters are required to show a specific form of identification known as a first-time voter ID. New voters who were unable to present one of the required forms of first-time voter ID when registering must provide both a first-time voter ID and an accepted form of photo ID at the polling place before being issued a ballot. Those who did not present a first-time voter ID when registering are flagged in the poll book so that poll clerks know to ask for an acceptable form of first-time voter ID. Acceptable forms of first-time voter ID include a current and valid photo ID or a current utility bill, bank statement, government check, paycheck, or other government document that shows the name and current residence of the voter. If a voter that is flagged is unable to provide you with a valid form of first-time voter ID, a provisional ballot must be issued to the voter. There are 3 exceptions to the voter ID requirement. They are a signed, sworn affidavit by an adult who has known the voter for 6 months or more, and the person signing the affidavit must show a photo ID with name and address, a poll worker who has known the voter for at least 6 months, or residents of a state care facility that vote at their facility. Once the voter has satisfied the ID requirement, the poll worker may proceed with checking them in using the poll book. Paper poll books. For precincts that use paper poll books, the poll worker should locate the voter in the poll book, check the voter's ID against the information included, and mark it accordingly. If the voter has moved addresses without updating their registration, their address may be incorrect in the poll book. If the voter is in the poll book, but their name or address is incorrect, contact the clerk's office to check if they are in the proper precinct. If they are still in the proper precinct, update the address either in the poll book or by the instruction of the county clerk. If the address is incorrect, direct them to vote a provisional ballot at their proper precinct. If the voter's registration is not in the poll book at all, but they are in the right precinct, they can fill out a blank listing in the back of the poll book and vote a provisional ballot. Voters who wish to vote in the wrong precinct based on county clerk records should be issued a provisional ballot. The circumstances surrounding provisional ballots are reviewed by a county board during canvass. The board will decide whether a ballot is counted based on the voter's eligibility under the law to vote in that precinct. Poll workers must provide voters the information sheet on how to track their provisional ballot. Under no circumstances may a voter be refused a provisional ballot at the polling place. Once all voter information is correct, check for their name on the list of absentee and early voters before issuing their ballot. If the voter is on either the absentee or early voters list, they must be issued a provisional ballot if they insist on voting again. If the voter provides their absentee ballot to a poll worker, the poll worker may spoil the ballot, place it in the spoiled ballot envelope, and allow the voter to vote a regular ballot at the polling place. If the voter is not on the absentee or early voting list, have them sign the poll book and compare the signatures. Poll workers may challenge the voter if the signatures do not match. In primary elections, those registered as independent or non-affiliated voters may vote the nonpartisan ballot, or they may request to vote a ballot of a recognized party who chooses to provide this option. Poll workers should direct voters to the sign explaining which ballot they have the option to vote. Voters registered with a recognized political party, such as Republican, Democrat, Mountain, Libertarian, or Constitution, may only vote their party's ballot if available. If a voter is registered with a recognized party who does not nominate their candidates in the primary, they must vote the nonpartisan ballot. A poll worker may not suggest a ballot for an independent or non-affiliated voter in a primary election. If the voter does not choose a ballot style, issue a nonpartisan ballot. Write the ballot stub number onto the poll slip located in the poll book, then cut or tear it from the poll book. Two poll workers of different political parties should then sign the back of the ballot that is being issued. Place the ballot in a secrecy sleeve and give it to the voter along with the poll slip. Section 3. How to vote. In this section, we will cover the proper process for voting once the voter has been checked in at the polling place. ExpressVote. To vote using the ExpressVote ballot marking device, the poll worker must first generate the voter's ballot on the screen by inserting the blank ballot issued to the voter. Be aware that the ballot will not feed into the machine properly unless the corner cut edge is facing the top right-hand corner. During early voting, a poll worker will need to choose the correct precinct for the voter before proceeding. During a primary election, the poll worker will also be responsible for choosing the proper ballot style depending on the party affiliation of the voter. After choosing the correct precinct and party affiliation if necessary, the generated ballot will automatically display on the screen. For counties that use the ES&S Express Poll Book and the optional ExpressVote Validator printer, the poll worker will not have to select the proper ballot style and precinct, as that information is included in the barcode that is generated by the external validator printer on the voter's activated ballot. To mark votes, touch anywhere inside the box of the desired candidate or issue. A finger, cotton swab, or stylus may be used on the ExpressVote screen to mark the vote. The box will change to green when selected properly. The ExpressVote marking device prevents the voter from overvoting. For example, if a specific contest asks the voter to vote for two options and they try to select three, the ExpressVote will prevent a third option from being selected. A selection can be removed by pressing it a second time. If the voter presses the exit button at any time during voting, the ballot will be ejected blank and the voter's progress will be lost. Once a voter is finished making selections, they have a chance to review their choices on the screen before finalizing their ballot. A voter may make changes to their selections from the review screen by touching the desired contest. Once the voter is satisfied with their votes, they press the Print Ballot button that appears on the review summary screen. A final print screen will appear and prompt the voter to hit Print Ballot a second time. The ExpressVote will then mark the voter's ballot with their selections and eject it from the same feeding mechanism where the poll worker inserted the blank card. Be sure not to pull the ballot from the machine until printing is complete. If a voter requests to change their choices after printing, a poll worker must spoil the printed ballot and issue them another blank card before voting again. To submit the finished ballot, the voter will place it within the secrecy sleeve as instructed and walk the ballot and sleeve over to the ballot box or ballot scanner. At this time, a poll worker will remove the ballot stub and attach it to the voter's poll slip. The ballot stub and poll slip are traditionally strung together with a needle and thread, but using a stapler works as well. Note that the ballot stub and poll slip must match, or the poll workers must spoil the ballot. After the ballot stub is removed, the voter will submit the ballot as instructed by the poll worker. This may include providing the ballot to the poll worker to place in the ballot box or ballot scanner, or the voter removing the ballot from the secrecy sleeve and placing it in the ballot box or ballot scanner directly. Hand marking ballots for optical scan. When voting a hand-marked optical scan ballot, voters should be instructed to take their time and read all instructions carefully. Instructions with each contest will specify how many selections can be chosen. Overvoting, or voting more selections than what is allowed for a specific contest, will cause all selections for that specific contest to not be counted. It is also worth noting that there is no penalty for undervoting or voting for fewer candidates than permitted if the voter chooses. Voters must select their desired candidate or issue by darkening the oval next to the selection completely. Voters should refrain from using any other marking method, such as check marks, placing an X, or striking a line through the oval. Voters should check the back of the ballot for additional contests. After completing the ballot and reviewing their selections, the voter will then approach the ballot box or DS200 ballot scanner for submission. If a voter wishes to change their selections before submitting their ballot into the ballot box or ballot scanner, they may ask a poll worker to spoil the current ballot and issue another. Before submitting the ballot, a poll worker will remove the ballot stub and attach it to the voter's poll slip. The ballot stub and poll slip are traditionally strung together with a needle and thread, but using a stapler works as well. Note that the ballot stub and poll slip must match, or the poll workers must spoil the ballot. After the ballot stub is removed, the voter will submit the ballot as instructed by the poll worker. This may include providing the ballot to the poll worker to place in the ballot box or ballot scanner, or the voter placing it in the ballot box or ballot scanner directly. Administering curbside voting. Upon receiving an alert from a curbside voter, if there are voters present inside the polling place, a poll worker may walk to the entrance of the polling place and momentarily stop voters from entering. If your precinct has an extra team of poll workers, curbside voting will not need to pause if 5 poll workers remain in your precinct. Once the voters who were already present in the polling place are finished casting their ballots, 2 election commissioners or poll clerks of opposite parties in the precinct provide the voter an absentee ballot application, an absentee ballot designated for curbside voting by the county clerk, the absentee voter's ballot envelope number 2, a secrecy envelope, and all materials available to voters in the polling place, for example, a sample ballot and write-in list. If the voter requires assistance, the 2 election commissioners or poll clerks or person designated by the voter shall sign number 7 on page 2 of the voter's absentee ballot application, titled Oath of Voter's Assistant. Next, the voter returns the completed absentee ballot application, completed absentee voter's ballot envelope number 2, and their ballot secured in the sealed secrecy envelope to the poll workers. Then, after the poll workers return to the polling place with the voter's absentee ballot application and materials, voting within the polling place may resume. At the end of the night, the precinct poll workers return curbside voter absentee ballot materials and applications to the county clerk with all other election materials. ADA compliance and accessibility. All counties, even those that use hand-marked paper ballots, are required by law to provide an ADA-compliant voting machine at every polling location for federal elections. The ExpressVote marking device meets the necessary requirements thanks to the many accessibility features it provides. The main accessibility features of the ExpressVote include an audio tactile keypad with braille labeling, headphones and port for audio ballot use, and height adjustment settings for both standing and seated voters. Poll workers may assist voters with setting up these accessibility features. The ExpressVote is also compatible with sip and puff switches. However, each voter is required to provide their own sip and puff device. Voters who qualify for assistance from another person in voting their ballot include, but are not limited to, voters with physical disabilities, voters with visual impairments, and voters who are unable to read. Persons who may assist the voter can be either a person of the voter's choice or 2 poll workers of opposite political parties. Persons who are prohibited from assisting a voter include an agent or office of a labor union, a present or former employer, or an agent of the employer. The person assisting the voter must complete the assisted voters form found in the precinct kit. All information on the form must be completed. If the same person assists multiple voters throughout the day, alert your county clerk or the Secretary of State's office. If the voter insists on receiving assistance after the poll workers have determined that they should not need it, the poll workers can require that a provisional ballot be cast to be considered later at canvass. Before making a final determination on whether a voter requires assistance or not, be mindful that a voter may not wish to reveal a learning disability. Provisional ballots. Provisional ballots are different from regular ballots and not counted on election night. Provisional ballots are considered by the County Board of Canvassers once the official canvassing process starts 5 days after the election. All election results are considered unofficial until canvassing is complete. In instances when a poll worker has good reason to doubt the eligibility of a voter, a provisional ballot should be used. A voter always has the right to vote a provisional ballot at the polling place if they so choose. Some common examples of when a poll worker should issue a voter a provisional ballot include: the voter's name is not in the poll book, the voter is in the wrong precinct, the voter has already voted absentee or during early voting, the poll book signatures do not match, the voter wants assistance but doesn't need it, a poll worker wishes to vote but is not in their precinct, and a voter does not have the required identification. Since provisional ballots are not counted on election night, they are kept separate from regular ballots. Provisional ballot poll slips remain in the poll book, and the ballot stub is left on the provisional ballot. Poll workers are also not to sign the provisional ballots. There are 3 envelopes needed for processing a provisional ballot. Envelope 1 is the privacy envelope, which is a substitute for the secrecy sleeve. It is intended to keep how the person voted private and should be given to the voter with their blank ballot. The privacy envelope is the smallest of the 3 and should have the voter's precinct number written on it. Envelope 2 is the explanation envelope, which the poll workers use to detail why the voter cast a provisional ballot. Poll workers must fill out both sides of the envelope. Envelope number 3 is the return envelope that holds all provisional ballots cast throughout the day for the precinct. This envelope will be sealed in the process of closing the polls after the statement of ballots used form is completed. While the voter is voting, fill out envelope number 2, the explanation envelope, completely. All information should be included and is important context for the County Board of Canvassers when considering whether the ballot should be counted. The voter should place the completed provisional ballot inside the privacy envelope. Remember that poll workers do not sign provisional ballots, and the ballot stub should not be removed. Place the privacy envelope inside the explanation envelope. Seal the explanation envelope and have the voter sign across the seal. Then place the sealed explanation envelope into the precinct envelope that holds all provisionals for that day. Once the provisional ballot is completed, fill out and give the voter a provisional ballot tracking slip. This tracking slip has instructions on how the voter can track their provisional ballot to determine if their vote was counted at canvass. Spoiling ballots. Spoiling a ballot is the proper procedure for disposing of a completed or partially completed ballot that has one of the following issues. The ballot stub and poll slip do not match, the ballot is defaced, the ballot was not signed by 2 poll workers, or the voter has indicated that they voted the ballot incorrectly and would like a new one. To spoil a ballot, first a poll clerk must write "spoiled" across the front of the ballot to indicate that the ballot is no longer usable. The ballot will then be placed in the spoiled ballot envelope. Do not dispose of the voter's poll slip, as it must be reused. Mark through the old ballot stub number in the poll book and replace it with a new one. Section 4, Ballot Boxes and Ballot Scanners. In this section, we will go over the proper procedure for storing completed ballots once the voter is finished with their selections. The ballot box at the polling place. Precincts that use a traditional ballot box at the polling place will store completed ballots until they can be tabulated at the clerk's office after the polls close. State law requires the ballot box to be secured with 2 separate padlocks, the keys to which are kept by 2 commissioners of opposite political parties. The ballot box should remain locked at all times throughout the day and only opened in the presence of both poll workers. Don't forget to remove the ballot stub before submitting a completed ballot into the locked ballot box. Remember that provisional ballots are not counted on election night and should not be stored with regular ballots. Section 5, Closing the Polls. This section covers the proper procedure for closing the polls and breaking down all the necessary equipment and materials for transport. At precisely 7:30 p.m., a poll worker should step out of the precinct and announce in a clear and audible manner that the polls are officially closed. All voters who are in line prior to 7:30 p.m. have the right to vote. 2 poll workers of opposite political parties shall issue each voter that is in line at 7:30 a waiting voter's permit. Those who do not have a permit after 7:30 are not allowed to vote. ExpressVote shutdown. To shut down the ExpressVote ballot marking devices, power off each unit by unlocking the side compartment with the barrel key and pushing the power switch into the off position. Follow any additional on-screen prompts to confirm shutdown if necessary. Consult with your county clerk on whether the USB media sticks should be removed or remain inside the ExpressVote after being powered down. If your precinct has its own DS200, this is not to be confused with the USB media stick you will be removing from the DS200 after shutdown. Continue with disassembly by removing the power cord and setting the ExpressVote into the travel position. Place all components, including the power cord, back in the black bag for transport. Packing and transporting election supplies. Remove all signage from inside of voting booths, on the entrances to the polling place, and around the perimeter, such as electioneering notifications and handicap parking signs. Place all signage and literature back in their corresponding bag. Before sealing all of the election materials, the poll workers must complete all Statement of Ballots Used forms. These forms take account of how many ballots were used throughout the day by counting ballot stubs and combining that total with the number of spoiled ballots. This form is mandatory for all elections and will be used as a reference at Canvass. Once the Statement of Ballots Used form is complete, seal all ballot stubs in the ballot stub envelope. All provisional ballots and spoiled ballots will each be sealed in their respective provisional ballot envelope and spoiled ballot envelope accordingly. Precincts utilizing a traditional ballot box will thread a tamper-evident seal through the lock insert of the ballot box to ensure safe transport back to the clerk's office for tabulation. Once all materials are packed, refer to the county clerk for directions on what to do with all of the sealed materials and any voting equipment that must be taken from the polling place. The sealed ballots, as well as any other sensitive information, such as the USB media stick and configuration report from the DS200 if applicable, should be accompanied by two poll workers who belong to opposite political parties but ride in the same vehicle back to the central counting location. That concludes the poll worker training curriculum provided by the West Virginia Secretary of State's office. Thank you for your service as a poll worker, and remember, elections cannot happen without you, the poll workers.